Hey everyone, welcome back to Daily Devotions. Pastor Steve here, walking with you in God's Word. Another day to rejoice, another day to grow in faith, and another day to be able to see God in action, but maybe not so visibly present. And that's what the narrative of Esther is truly all about. And so we get into a little bit of history in Esther chapter 3. Esther chapter 3, and as we get to continue this narrative, we get introduced to different characters. What we just saw, that Esther had become queen because of her beauty, a beauty pageant, but really for God's placement as a Benjamite, and as one from Israel, is now in Persia. And Mordecai, her uncle, being able to know this plot against the king, let it know, and then being able to know that should have received a reward, but all of a sudden we see this sharp right angle in chapter 3 that somebody else received a reward to be able to be brought up into the Persian Empire rather than Mordecai. And he was a person that was going to have a plot in a different way, not against the king, but against the people of God. Because that's always, excuse me, that is always what has been happening through generation upon generation, being able to know that the outside nations have always had a plot to be able to go after God's people. God has always provided. God has always protected. He's also given over his people over into Babylon and Assyria, but then brought them back. He has brought them back to Jerusalem, but now there's still people. There's still Jews in Persia, and Haman is looking like he needs to plot after them, just like his ancestors did. And so let's dig deep into chapter 3. Beginning at verse 1, it says, after these events. Now we know throughout history, and it's like, how do you know after these events? We know that King Xerxes honored Haman, and we know when he appointed that. That was in 475 BC. This is 4 years. So we're skipping pretty quickly. 4 years after Esther became queen. So King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha. We don't know, probably an ancestor. We don't necessarily know that in that history of what we have within the scriptures. But we do know the Agagite. The Agagite is King Agag. And so as you can look in whether you have notes or not, but we get to see that the Agagite could refer to some ancestor, but is most likely to refer to Agag, king of Amalek. Now Amalekites were always these people against, when they came out of Egypt, they had a war against the Amalekites. When King Saul, was in power right before David, this is 500 years before this narrative of Esther, we get to see that Saul came in and just absolutely obliterated the Amalekites and King Agag. So here we get to see an ancestor of Agag. So within this understanding, they put this Agagite in there. There's always been a war with the Amalekites. There's always been a battle with King Agag against the Israelites. And so here we go. Here is Haman from that ancestry. And he was King Agag is elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. And so you get to see this. It says, all the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. The battle starts. He gets to see that he's an ancestor, right, of being able to know what he had done against his people. But also you get to see this kind of ironic twist real quickly. I know it's not real quickly. It's 4 years later. But here's Haman being elevated. We don't get to hear why he was elevated. But here's Mordecai not elevated, and he's the one who actually saved the assassination of the king. So we get to see this ironic twist. However, it gets even deeper. Verse 3, then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why do you disobey the king's command? Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. In the 12th year of King Xerxes, 474 BC, 1 year after we've been talking about Haman's elevation here, says, in the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, in the month of Nisan, they cast the pure, that is the lot, in the presence of Haman to select a day and month. And the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. So pure, as we get to see there, the lot going forth. Now, if you get into a really deep study here, or understand or have Jewish friends, they celebrate a festival, and it's called Purim. Purim is this story going back, and we actually celebrate it, used to celebrate it right here at St. Paul, and being able to have that in the fellowship hall, and you have Haman's ears baked, and this rendering of this story, this narrative again, about the battle against the Israelites, against this kind of enraged hate against the Israelites, but yet God intervenes. Purim, the festival of Purim. So take part of that, especially after we go through these videos, because you'll know the whole kind of party, what it is all about. It says here, verse 8, Then Haman said to King Xerxes, There is a certain people dispersed and scattered among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom, whose customs are different from those of all other people, and who do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will put 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury for the men who carry out this business. So the king took his signet ring from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Keep the money, the king said to Haman, and do with the people as you please. Then, on the 13th day of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. This is a day, right? This is like, 13 days. I think it was the first day. Let's look back there. It says on the first day. Yep. First month, in the first month, the month of Nisan, I'm going back to the cast of the pure. Here's the 13th day. Not too long afterwards, of the first month, the royal secretaries were summoned. They wrote out in the script of each province and in the language of each people all Haman's orders to the king's satraps, the governors, and the various provinces and the nobles of the various peoples. These were written in the name of King Xerxes himself and sealed with his own ring. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and little children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so they would be ready for that day. Spurred on by the king's command, the couriers went out, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was bewildered. There is division, there is hate going on within the city, the citadel of Susa. They were bewildered because here comes this law, but many people are still there as they are Jews, and it has been an edict now. It has been a command from the king with his ring embracing, signifying this edict. They were to be killed. And there was actually a way, a structure, a plan to go about this. So think about this for a second. You're sitting there in that first month, and this goes out on the 13th day. And so 11 months later, a whole year that you're sitting in here, that by that 13th day, this is when it's going to start. What do? Do the people flee? Do the people buckle down and get their arms ready? You get to see in the rest of this narrative, Esther 4 through as we go through the chapters, you get to see that not only the people have thoughts, but God intervenes. God always protects his people, even in the midst of man's laws. It doesn't trump what God has in store. So as the plot thickens, as the battles are planned, God always has his way as well. As you sit today, and as the plot thickens in your life and the battle is raged against you by the evil one, just take heed, take comfort. God is at work. Even when it doesn't look like it, God is at work, and he will protect his people. To that we say, thanks be to God. Have a blessed day.